really top-tier, exclusive offering in a country, and thankfully it went really well. Viewers loved it. It did very well for the business, and really we've grown since there. But no, the Premier League's been a big part of our offering in the UK for the last 6 years.
I guess that then leads to the question of why you're coming out of that market.
Well, we're super excited about these new Champions League rights we have. We've loved offering the Premier League to our fans around December time. We know that it's gone down well, but we weren't able to find the right package to complement.
Consumers have been critical of technical issues when it comes to streaming services, particularly compared to traditional television. What have you learned from any early setbacks of streaming live sport, and how is it changing?
Yeah, well, thankfully we get very few complaints these days. Of course, we've learned a lot over the years, and we never stop trying to improve. A good example is latency, the delay behind being live in the stadium versus watching on your screen. That was a lot longer in the earlier days for various technical reasons, but now we've worked hard at that. And on many devices, actually, you can now watch within 10 seconds of the live game, and that's faster than a lot of traditional means of TV.
That's faster than TV.
But a lot of types of TV.
I suppose it's chasing those younger viewers these days. Does the way they consume sport, which is often very content-driven as opposed to watching live sport when they're younger, does that change what you watch at the time?
Yes, they do still love live sport, and interestingly, we've seen in the US with our Thursday night NFL football that actually the average audience we've been able to attract that is 7 years younger in the first 2 years than on traditional cable TV in the US. So we know we're able to reach them. But yes, of course, while they're watching the live sport.
What have you learned production-wise, or maybe business-wise, from having Champions League rights in other countries that you might now be putting into what's happening this season in this country?
Yes, well, as you mentioned, we've been offering it Champions League in Germany and in Italy for the past 3 years, and we love it. We love it. We get used to offering these huge packages every night, and when we've been into format now, we'll see how that develops. But I think the session's going to feel
moves into operation today, what they're planning in terms of electricity and gas networks will be taken over by a new national energy system operator. This includes this will hope to make the UK's electricity grid fleet by 2040.
Alan, thank you very much. This is 259, and here in Birmingham, the Conservative Party conference is now well underway. These are crucial days for core leadership candidates. And inside the conference centre, as I am this morning, there are lots of party members present, trying to say that the business plans that the future when the party was in government. Soon, the core leadership candidates will become the finalist. Journalists were welcome here by someone who was until now the most prominent and powerful Conservative in the country, Andrew Smith, who is now the former mayor of the West Midlands. I've been talking to him about party, tactics, and plans. Here we are in the centre of Birmingham, the convention centre just on one side, with all these other buildings, old and new. What do you feel as you stand here at the convention, no longer in office?
Well, I hope I and the other brothers will feel very proud of this new generation. Let's be clear, there's lots of other parts of the city that still need it. We're not blind to that. So the headquarters of HSBC, UK Bank over there, Goldman Sachs, with PwC, big commercial headquarters. So I think it's a really confident statement for the future of this place.
But it must have hurt.
Losing her, of course it hurt, because I genuinely believe that what we were doing here was showing that a modern, inclusive, you might call it one nation conservatism, could deliver for people. We were dealing with the practical things: jobs, housing, transport.
Soon after your loss, of course, came your party's massive loss. When you've been in that convention centre, do you think they get it? They get the scale of what will need to be done to regain power?
Not exclusively, no. So if you ask me, what two things have got to happen? First of all, there is that whole period of contrition, understanding why we lost and this loss of trust. But then the second issue is how are we going to assemble a policy platform which is decidedly centre, right centre, the emphasis the word, and we've got to reject this tilt to the extreme right that Farage is. They are not conservatives, and if we want to be like Farage, we will lose. The lesson of history is you win from the centre ground.
A few steps away is the venue of the Conservative Party conference, and I'm heading in there now, out of the drizzly rain, to be greeted in this main entrance hall by four faces. There are giant banners hanging from the ceiling, each one with one of the four candidates for leader and their slogans. For now, this contest remains in the hands of the MPs. They are the ones who are going to whittle down the current torch too. There are people here who lost their seats at the election, there are others who stood down before, and some who are still serving, including Sir John Hayes, an MP in Lincolnshire and a well-known figure on the right of the party.
Well, hard, really, a sort of politics which is cast by the tide. They want politics to make the waves.
Does that mean you don't think that elections are won from the centre?
Well, I think one of the few, perhaps the only conservative view that actually carries the Disraeli Express project.
Really, Sherry?
I'm inspired by what he said and did.
You actually do, there it is.
Well, probably.
Yes, really correct all years now. There he is.
Selfish individualism that is true to that core principle of risk, which is
And so next week, MPs will get the floor down to two, and after that, Conservative Party members will get to have their say. There are plenty of them here at the conference, and inside the venue I sat down with three. My name is Jane McLean, and I am the Deputy Fiscal Campaigning for the Durham and Blaydon Federation of North East England. I'm Daphne Bagshaw, and I'm Chairman of the Sussex Weald Conservative Association. My name's Emma Griffin, I'm on the Executive Board of Robert Jenrick's constituency in Durham. People do seem quite upbeat, and obviously the government, the Labour government, is taking a bit of a kicking at the moment, but do you think that is slightly leading to some false hope at this point about being back in government in 5 years? I would say that the younger generation who maybe voted Reform or Labour at this last election, they're now seeing what a Labour government can do in a very short period of time. The feeling of the conference is yes, we need to own the mistakes we've made as a party, but we need to focus on the future. I think there's a fantastic optimism here. I mean, we're seeing Labour are making some mistakes. They're a new government, they're settling in. We're down to about 120 MPs, 121, but we will rebuild. And what I hear is a real sense of optimism. We have more more members here at conference than we've ever had before, and people are coming for the first time to conference. They are loving having access to all of the leadership candidates, and they feel incredibly involved.
I would say this is an optimistic conference in some ways, but it's also very realistic. Time and time again, I've heard it said here, and it's true, the Labour Party did not win the last election. We comprehensively lost it. Does reform worry you? Does the party need to be more like reform to stop voters leaving it?
I think it all comes down to policy and what that looks like.
Ella is her best friend, so she believes this is the only way to get him back, to be reunited with him. So I'm confused. I'm proud of my mother for doing this, but I'm also disgusted for her. My mom is 68. I don't think her body can, she's very resilient. So
We have this upcoming meeting with the Foreign Secretary. The statement that we've had from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office says that the Foreign Secretary is committed to trying to resolve Alaa's case, and the family have been offered a meeting. He raised the need to make progress on Alaa's case in his first meeting with the Egyptian Foreign Minister, which took place at the UN last week.
that's not with the previous government, with the tourists, they used to say we raised it at the highest levels of governance. And back then, the foreign secretary now, David Lammy, used to criticize the whole government and used to say that he said that they had promised secretly. On this show, on this program, we called for the Egyptian ambassador to have his access to Whitehall River and talked about the tremendous leverage of the Trade and Partnership with Egypt. So I'm asking you on his words as the foreign secretary, I'm not going to accept that the Labour government is as weak as the previous government.
So he said completely different things, essentially, when he was in opposition. He pointed to two specific things: the access of the Egyptian ambassador to Whitehall and the financial relationship, essentially, that the UK has with Egypt. Are those the two levers that you are looking to him to fill immediately?
I'm sure that now also when he's in office, he knows more leaders. That I'm sure the British government has a lot of tools. Britain and Egypt are allies. These governments are friends. You can surely call their friends and ask them and push them to abide by their own laws when it comes to one of their citizens. Also, David Lammy said that Allah was a courageous force for democracy. So he understands that my brother is innocent. And his home I spent a day in prison. But if we forget that, that has served us 6 sentence, the 5 years for all. So this is very, very low bar ask.
Sana safe. That's all. Thank you.
No 6 minutes to know. Imagine acting in a play which there's no chance to rehearse, no director who can really ever perform the role once. That is what awaits actors who take to the stage in White Rabbit and Red Rabbit to find the script or waiting for them in the seal of the third. Mohammed is the first actor to take on the challenge in a new production of White Rabbit tonight, and Juliet seems to have a tickle too for it because she started one of the first productions back in 2012. It's now been performed more than 3,000 times. Morning to you both.
Good morning.
Juliet,
Morning.
what was it like taking on the role when you did?
It's very, very surreal, mate. I mean, but I loved it. I really loved it. I mean, it certainly is only for actors who are happy to, to leave their comfort zone. That's for sure.
Did you really know nothing about it before you opened it
Absolutely.
anyway?
No, absolutely nothing. I mean, you stand on a stage, empty stage, there's nothing on it except for you. The audience are watching you. Somebody comes on, hands you a brown envelope. They leave. You open it, take out the script, and you start to perform the contents. And obviously, I can't tell you the contents because the whole point is that you have no idea. But I mean, I think the beauty of it is that it's completely unique. There's nothing like it in the world. And in a way, you've got an excuse because they know that you haven't rehearsed or prepared, so you can sort of more or less have the freedom to do anything and not feel too judged.
Now, Juliet, I can see Nick Mohammed. I can't see you, but I can see him. He's looking ever so slightly nervous, Nick. Are you?
I am. Juliet, first of all, I need to say that I'm an absolutely huge fan of yours, and I apologise. This is a tiny bit off topic, but I grew up in Meanwood, and I went to school with Eleanor and David.
Oh,
and so please send them
Can
my
we hook
love.
you
You'll
up
need to
after the
know you.
program?
That's my new connection.
No,
How amazing, Nick. How amazing.
I know.
advice if you would, Dick.
Well, yeah. Well, you know what? I've actually done one of Nassim's plays before, which is sort of similar in principle. So I did Echo at the Royal Court in the summer, which is similar in that it's you don't have any preparation beforehand. You very much get the script just before you go on stage. I from what I understand, because obviously they deliberately tell you not to do any research on the show. Definitely don't go and see a production of it or read any reviews of it or anything like that. From what I understand, I think Echo was a little bit more tech heavy, and indeed we actually had technical difficulties during that show because in fact Nassim was streamed live during that, and I didn't know whether it was live or pre-recorded until I was on stage. It was very strange, but there is something incredibly thrilling about it.
Now, we can't tell him too much, Julia, can we? But I read that there is one instruction you all get if you're going to act in this play, which is to prepare an ostrich impersonation.
Well, I never had that preparation. I just found myself, having to do certain impersonations that I've certainly not prepared. I mean, I would say, Nick, just be ready to do things on stage that you've never dreamed of doing and will almost certainly never do again.
It was funny when that email came through. They send an email to every actor doing it 48 hours before their performance, and yeah, on the top line is prepare an ostrich impression. And I remember just saying to my wife, I was like, I wonder if do I need to act like a bird, or is it just the noise of an ostrich? Do I need to Google it? Do I need to? So yeah, so there's a lot of things running through my head.
I wouldn't take it too seriously. I mean, I think the point is that when people are watching a play, an audience watching a play, the sort of make believe is this is all happening for the first time. Even though the show may have been running for 6 months, but the whole point is, what you're seeing has never happened before, and that's the strain for actors, is to go out there every single night, and pretend it's never happened before. But with White Rabbit, Red Rabbit, it genuinely hasn't ever happened before. It really is happening for the first time, and so the actor and the audience are at one. They're in the same place, which is a sort of wonderful. I think it's really, I think you wrote it as a sort of metaphor for life, which you can't prepare for or rehearse. We live our lives sight unseen, not knowing what's going to happen next. And
the Iranian playwright Nazim Soleimanpour says that he's writing not about his own country, but about a social phenomenon which is obedience. Are you the actor meant to be?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think because you're given instructions during it, that's all I can say. During it, some of the time you're given instructions for the audience. What must be done is watching how you interpret those orders, how you interpret those instructions, to what extent they're obedient, to what extent you're not. Because after all, these are political disciplines, and that it's satire really. I think that's the part of it, is that the audience hear the instructions and then you watch the actor.
Just a few seconds to give the last word to Nick. How on earth you've done the David Marriage? You're in a dark room now.
I think it's deliberately closed. Actually, I've been talking on better than prepare.
Throw away.
Don't worry, I think Juliet said, don't in any sense wrong. Which would be good and bad, but Juliet
It's just about it from us for this morning. And our editors were Victoria Gardner and Dave Butler, Dan having with me in Birmingham, where the studio director was Ian Mitchell. Also in all of us on the programme.
some music by the clock. Also says there's some spicy soldiers and Hezbollah fighters in some But are these aliens silent, or are they mindless themselves as human guides? Is the picture today as the small boats comes to new government, dusting well the rights. And also played on the minds of those in charge half a millennium ago in the 16th century. Here's whose talk is John Gallagher, who's Associate Professor of History at the University of Leeds, and breaking new ground in his research on this subject. John Gallagher, we're talking about the 70s into the 90s, that period. Just let's put some identity on it. Wasn't crossing the channel in small boats. And why were they doing it? Why were they successful coming to market?
So we're talking here about from modern day France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, by and large Belgium and the Netherlands, the Low Countries. And the two main reasons why you have migrants and refugees crossing the channel during this period are between two major conflicts. In France, you have the French wars of religion, so extremely virulent religious conflict between Protestants and Catholics, resulting in massacres, also atrocities. And in the Low Countries, you see a revolt by Protestant Dutch speakers against rule by the Spanish crown. So by kind of the mid-1560s, you've got relatively extreme levels of conflict in both of those spaces. And in both cases, you have Protestant refugees trying to cross the channel to escape Catholic persecution, to escape violence, and to find themselves safe in a Protestant state, that is, England under Elizabeth.
So the lure of England then is that it is a safe Protestant harbour for these people. What do we know about the how of these journeys? How did they come here?
We know that people would have arrived at ports along the coast in France and in the Low Countries, and that by and large they were not taking passenger ferries of the kind we'd imagine today. By and large, they would also be seeking passage on commercial ships that were plying their trade. You would often arrive at the port and have to wait out until the weather was good enough and until there was a captain willing to take you. The journey was short, but could be perilous, could be storm-racked, and you could be turned back as well. And at the same time, people who were fleeing persecution were very aware that there were authorities looking out for them as they left. And the same thing, of course, was the case on arrival in England. So when to England, there would be kind of great interest shown by port authorities and by the English state to know who exactly was crossing the border and coming into the country.
And so to what extent were these clandestine crossings that had to be done with, I hesitate to use the word traffickers, but people who would help them out under cover of darkness?
One of the things that we can just about see in the few surviving letters that we have from migrants at the time is that there were these kind of networks of information and of people who could facilitate these crossings. So we find people writing, for instance, to family members to tell them, sell your goods and here's the person you need to talk to, and they'll help you to come across. We have other accounts where people talk about being led by a guide. So you'll have a group of migrants who travel together, and they'll engage someone who knows the route, who potentially has contacts that will allow them to make the crossing. But there's a huge amount of tension there, and we see in those accounts people getting really worried, for instance, when they realise that the local authorities might have gotten wind of the fact and that they're Calvinist migrants making for England.
All right, so you mentioned that you do have some surviving correspondence from people who made these perilous journeys. And in fact, we've got a pair of letters from people who arrived in England from the Netherlands in 1567, asking their loved ones to follow them and giving them advice on the journey. And they're read for us by our actor, Ruth Evans.
Harold de Cone to his wife in Ypres, from Norwich, 21st August, 1567. I am sending you a barrel of herring, which I urge you to sell as soon as possible so that you may more quickly set out on your journey. For the journey, as we understand, is every day becoming more dangerous, and will become still more dangerous because the devil will become more furious. Clement Back to his wife, from Norwich, 5th September, 1567. Bring also with you all your clothes and your daughter's clothes, for people go about decently dressed. And bring all this to the New Dam and go to Newport, to the Half Moon. The woman there will help you.
And so here the testimony firsthand from those who did do this journey. You can feel some of the anxiety in those letters from Geller. Just in a nutshell, how dangerous was it?
There's really serious danger, although for many of these people you have, and this will be familiar to anyone thinking about small boat crossings today, people are weighing up the danger that they're fleeing against the potential dangers of the journey. So there are dangers along the way. There are dangers of imprisonment. There are dangers of extremely torture and punishment, and indeed execution along the way. So this is an extremely dangerous thing to undertake, but people are weighing it up with the danger of staying in a place where you are not able to practice your own faith. So you see that real sense of danger there. On the other hand of those letters, you also see people talking up England and saying, this is a place where people have been very welcome, where there's good money to be made, where you can come and join us and live a much freer life as well. And we get a sense from that woman at the Half Moon, the Haldeman Tavern, of one of the people who might have been a chain in this kind of journey of migration, someone who had the information that he needed to make the next step.
Well, listening to the stories of the past is someone who covers the stories of the present. Tom Simons, BBC News correspondent, who's covered some of these crossings. Just listening to that, we heard then about the journeys people were making and how they did it. So now, who are the people making the crossings now, and why are they particularly coming to us?
It's astonishing how little changes over the centuries, isn't it? Because the people that I've spoken to in migrants camps in northern France have come from, again, the world's trouble spots. They're coming for so many different reasons. They're all weighing up the risk of the push and pull factors, the risk of staying and the risk of going to the UK. And why they're coming, they give you so many different answers. If you talk to them in the camps, I'm really thinking of a conversation I had with Jala, who's a mother with 3 children, Iraqi, brilliant English, really well educated. She said, in England the human rights are better. I speak English, they speak English in the UK. And she said that there are many people coming here from Iraq and it would be possible to find work. But she was weighing up the dangers, absolutely, because she was looking at her 3 children and she had put those children in a small boat pretty much every night when I came across her. Hadn't made it to the UK, but had risked losing those children as happened this year in the seas of the Channel. So this is such a serious decision for them to make. Of course, there are migrants who are facing hardship in their own countries. There are some that want a better life economically. There are all sorts of reasons, but the risk is absolutely the same for all of them.
And what about the how then? Because we heard that there were some established routes back then, even commercial shipping traffic that you could sort of, as it were, hitch a ride on. Now it seems as if the picture is rather different. These boats are small because they are not on the stack shipping. But how is it done now?
It is an industrial operation, and it starts back in a number of places. The countries where people are coming from, where often there are social media adverts, in particular in Eastern Europe, actually, which are a chain of travel which is now kind of closed off a bit because of migration policy changes. There's also a flow of equipment to get them there, rubber boats being made specifically for this purpose, often in places like China, shipped across the world to northern France, buried in the sand of the dunes of northern France, and then dug out when the people smugglers need them. And those people smugglers are taking thousands of pounds, let's say, from people who want to get to the United Kingdom. They're arranging some of the travel, some of them are arranging all the travel all the way. You speak to people who got in a lorry halfway across the world and pretty much got out in northern France and find themselves in camps waiting for the moment to cross the channel. So it is a seriously big and organised operation. It's a multi-million pound industry. And very sadly, I was in France a few months ago when a boat went down just south of where we were. And it went down because there was a fight for space on this rubber dinghy that could hold maybe 30 people at a push, and far, far more people trying to control. And very sadly, a number of people died, including a 7-year-old girl. So the dangers are absolutely there.
Just on that, John Gallagher, in your research and the documents you found, have you found any evidence of that kind of competition, that sort of scramble for places on these boats and ships that were making, albeit very different kinds of crossings, back in the 16th century?
So I've certainly seen shipwrecks, and there are accounts of migrants dying in the Channel in this period as well. And it is a dangerous course, it's not without danger. But I would say that you also see, I've seen nothing on overcrowding, but there's some more material in these letters and in other sources about the other dangers of the
violence and indeed sexual violence from people who were members of your own travelling party, or indeed the guides or the brokers whose job it was to get you where you were going. I've come across a couple of stories told by women who've reached London in this period about the fact that they were assaulted, or there were attempts at sexual assault, that there were guides who said, I'll let you have the crossing for free if you sleep with me. And these kinds of risks are very, very present at all points, both in France and the Low Countries, on the sea and when people arrive.
This is the right moment to bring in Madeleine Sumption, who's Director of the Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford.
I think there are definitely parallels with the experience of women travelling alone then and now as well. So there are lots of reports that women feel very uncomfortable in some of the areas around Calais, for example, when they're travelling alone. So most of the people who cross the Tours are men, and one of the reasons for that is that there are risks of sexual exploitation, and women don't feel safe in some of the camps around Calais when they're waiting. So I think that aspect of things has not changed in economic.
So that takes us up to the moment where the boats set off, cast off onto the water, and these people look for a new life on the other side of the channel in England. In terms of that crossing, how rigorously was the channel, the coastline, policed back then, John Gallagher, in the Elizabethan?
The English authorities are constantly frustrated by the fact that it is possible to smuggle people, goods, and ideas into England by sea. And they are very good. For instance, the ships should make landing at recognised points. They don't want people being dropped off along the coast, being picked up, indeed by small boats. This is an issue for smuggling. It's for the interstate. The big issue actually is not really policing for these Protestant refugees, these Protestant migrants. The big issue for them is Catholics. They're really worried that Catholic priests and Catholic texts being smuggled into the country. So when you see the kind of policing of arrival in the channel, that's really at the heart of it. Now, that's not to say that when you arrive on the English coast, that you don't face some questioning. We know that port authorities will do some questioning of new arrivals on these ships, but it's nowhere near as rigorous as it would be today.
And John Gallagher, once they got to these shores, we know they hoped for protection because this was a Protestant country and they were fleeing persecution for their Protestant faith. But what actually were the protections that greeted them when they got
the kinds of protection that are available? Many people who arrive in the 16th century, their first stop will be what's called a stranger church in a place like London or Norwich or Yarmouth, Sandwich. And this is a Protestant.
On the 13th of April this year, they launched over 350 missiles, cruise missiles, and drones at Israel, and almost all of them were shot down. I think only 7 of them got through and did no damage whatsoever. And that was humiliation for the Iranians. So if they wanted to launch a missile attack, they'd have to do something different and a bit more effective. And now everyone's on alert for it in any case.
Well, to what extent is Israel's missile protection? To what extent does that protect the whole of Israel against ballistic missiles?
It depends on the extent of the attack. It will certainly protect them against ballistic missiles in small numbers, maybe in bigger numbers, but depending on how they're phased. I mean, the Iron Dome can be overwhelmed, and the other systems that these weapons have got below the Iron Dome can be overwhelmed as well. And remember, last time, on the 13th of April, the Israelis had the help of the United States and Britain, France, and Jordan as well. They might not have that this time for a mixture of political and operational reasons. I was having a look at what the Americans have got in the area at the moment, and they'd be stretched, to be honest, if they tried to provide the same sort of protection as they provided on the 13th of April. So the Iranians have a chance, but I'm not sure that they've put together a really mass missile attack from Iran or from their other areas that they presently influence. I think it's very difficult for them.
Michael Clark there from KCL, King's College in London. It's obviously an enormous moment. Let's talk through it with Sir Mark Valgrant, former UK ambassador to the United States, former national security advisor, joining us live on PM. Sir Mark, thank you for your time. I wonder if we can just talk about scenarios. How worried are you that this escalates into something very, very serious?
Well, I think there is a serious risk of escalation now, both in Lebanon and in terms of the response from Iran, because as Michael Clark has just been saying, Iran, of course, Hezbollah has suffered a massive defeat, decimated their leadership, their communications, command and control, now some of the infrastructure over the last few weeks. But that is a very significant defeat for Iran as well, because Hezbollah is their largest, most important asset in the region. So they will certainly want to respond. But can they do more than they did in April? I think that is unclear. But if they try, then certainly that would be even greater danger of a regional conflict than there was in April, because the Americans are not only warning that this will happen, but are warning that they themselves could be involved in any response. And that, I think, would obviously be extremely worrying for the region. At the same time, there is the risk of Israel themselves getting bogged down in Lebanon and leading to a much greater humanitarian crisis in that country.
Okay, that is clearly a scenario that people will be thinking about. Suppose Iran engages in something rather like it did in a pretty large-scale attack on Israel, although not particularly damaging in terms of scale of it. What should the American response be? What would you like America to do?
Well, I think America's whole plan, their strategy over the last 12 months has been to try to prevent what was originally an Israel-Hamas conflict becoming a wider regional conflict. And they have actually been quite successful in that. Right at the beginning of this, 12 months ago, they warned Iran not to get involved, moved warships into the Eastern Mediterranean to say that we wouldn't stand by if there was a wide conflict, etc. So despite what Houthis have done, Hezbollah have been doing, West Bank, Iran in April, on the whole, it has been more content. But now in the last few weeks, suddenly we are seeing a major escalation. And I think the Americans now feel that it's going to be very, very difficult to contain this. But just 5 weeks before an American election, is President Biden really going to want to do more than they did in April, which is use some of their aerial and warship capabilities to fight back, to defensively protect Israel from Iran's missiles, or would they want to go on the offensive and actually launch some sort of attack themselves into Iran? I think myself that President Biden will be very reluctant to do an offensive operation into Iran, whatever Iran does towards Israel.
All right, we looked at the, if you like, the escalation scenario. What's the best case scenario for where we are at the moment? What would be your hopes of how this could resolve?
Well, the best hope is that Iran does not get involved at all at the moment directly, that Israel continues its what they call a limited localized operation in southern Lebanon, and so far it has been very localized. And as a result, some sort of back-channel communication will start with a view to reasserting the truce that after all had lasted 17 years after 2016, and you can get back to some sort of stability across that border. And given that Hezbollah is in a much weaker state than it was in it's not completely inconceivable that the Lebanese state, the Lebanese government itself, will be able to restrain Hezbollah in a way that will place Hezbollah in some areas of Lebanon south of the Mediterranean. I mean, that is the gospel scenario. I don't personally think it's very likely to happen, but I think that's what international diplomats are working towards.
That's really helpful to talk through what worst case, best case, smart market. Some sort of shooting right now, let's go through some of the other things.
The bodies of 20 children and 3 teachers have been recovered after a bus crashed and caught fire in Bangkok, after a school trip. A Chinese woman has been arrested in Germany on suspicion of spying on the country's defence industry. The theatres in the West End of London are going to dim their lights this evening in honour of the actress Maggie Smith. She died last week at the age of 89.
Thank you, Chris. Suspected acid attack in West Manchester.
14-year-old girl was actually life changing. It was a 16-year-old boy who was supposed to jail. And the teacher came to me. Let's hear more about this. He lived at the school in Westminster, where they were attacking. So just tell us what we know.
Yeah, hi Evan. Well, this was a pretty awful attack, obviously. It happened just after school had finished yesterday. It was around 20 to 5. Police have told us that someone rode up on an e-scooter just outside the school and threw a substance at the two young victims before riding off. Whatever was thrown at them is still being tested, but police believe it's some sort of acidic substance. The school, in their statement earlier, said it was definitely corrosive. One of the school staff came out to help the two children and was also affected by what appeared to be thrown. And in terms of the injuries, as you say, 14-year-old girl is still in hospital. Her injuries are described as potentially life-changing. Police say they might not actually know for some time just how severe those injuries are. The 16-year-old boy who is still in hospital and the 27-year-old member of staff who has now been discharged received less serious injuries. There were also two police officers who were treated because they complained about feeling ill after helping those that were attacked. And as you can imagine, there was a large emergency response including hazardous substance team from the London Fire Department. And we're told that a number of crime scenes are in place as the investigation continues to happen.
What do we know of the person who celebrated?
Well, just a description at this stage. They said he was described as a tall, slim black male. He's wearing dark clothing with his face covered with either a mask or a balaclava. And as we've said, he was riding an e-scooter. But at the time this happened, it would have been very busy. The school, the Westminster Academy, is on a main road. It's keen to hear from anyone who saw what happened with us. We often hear that. They also want to see if anyone has dash cam footage from their cars from the time at around 20 to 5 yesterday afternoon.
He lives from different allocation of tips. It's an altered mistake. So, a lot of reference to how they the North, last year for a number was sure that we should be told together, we've shown Indian street food and niche now. But we've been doing this for a great or do you now have to follow on?
Well, we've been let's say for 10 years, it's the I think it's very much because I built this restaurant coming at it as a consumer, and I would have always presumed that it would give a tip because I hope that it's going direct to those people that serve you, be it on the front of house or back in the kitchen where they're working so hard. So yes, it is the case that we've always done it. If the business was not predicated financially in any way, it's taking money out of that pot. But obviously,
or is there some allocation that the waiting staff who might they get more?
It's very interesting. What happens is the staff themselves decide on that allocation to demarcation, front of house and back of house. Different places, different restaurants choose to distribute it in different ways. So what's very important really important is that we don't so it's must not touch that process in any way. It is absolutely
fundamentally what here's the thing, hospitality has been one of the things for many. There's people who have confidence in it, it's also difficult to do. Highly attractive in terms of what you earn, in terms of the fact that it is a cultural place to work with your protected, and so what wages is going to that for us in the hospitality industry. We are out there, very big well going to good pay. First of all, your pay is good, and then you've got to take that just a bonus. But it's the entire impact of the work to them that's on you want to stay. The cost of the training what then happens is you get good service, you get great food, that response to small crisis that's going on economically, and then so it's a big business that people start doing. It's the same with costs going possibly a temptation that there are any businesses that have put hands into the big box. Those businesses might want to then increase their prices, but it's all highly
has sent a private message of congratulations to the former US President Jimmy Carter, who celebrated his 100th birthday. Mr. Carter is the first former US President to reach the milestone. It's understood the message expressed great admiration for Mr. Carter's lifetime of duty and public service. Chris, thank you very much. Now, Reuters are reporting that Israeli militants say missiles have been launched in Iran. Just roughly at the same time, hospital shooting in Jaffa, in Tel Aviv, many wounded, too critically, the headlines in the Israeli press. We will follow up on that, of course, in the next few minutes. Israel's on peak alert. In Lebanon, of course, the Israelis have been launching many strikes up there where hundreds of deaths reported, 100,000 displaced. Let's hear from Anna Foster in Beirut before we go back to catch up with events in Israel. Anna, how are people taking the last 24 hours and the events that we've reported?
Well, I think just listening to you speaking there, and those few lines that are coming through all the time is reflected in the way that people are feeling here. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning local time when it was confirmed that Israel had launched that ground invasion into southern Lebanon. But we are still hearing Israeli airstrikes in the city of Beirut. There was another one a couple of hours ago. So there is real concern and nervousness. Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Yuval McCarthy said earlier today that this is, he felt, the most dangerous moment in Lebanon's history. And I think when you look at what is happening not just in this country but around it, and as you say there, a possible Iranian response to this ground invasion this morning coming, we're told, by the US in the form of a ballistic missile attack on Israel. There are other Iranian proxies in the region as well, of course, the Houthis in Yemen, Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria. So it really is an astonishingly dangerous moment for a conflict which has gone on for so long.
Anna, Israel has always said our war isn't with Lebanon, it's with Hezbollah. To what extent do non-Hezbollah supporting Lebanese accept that line from Israel?
They find it hard to accept, and the problem is that Hezbollah is more than just an armed group. It is embedded within Lebanese society. It has MPs in the parliament. It is the most powerful military force in the country, more so than the Lebanese armed forces. It is often referred to as a state within a state, and for its supporters, it is an organisation that looks after them and protects them from some of the blows that life in Lebanon can deal with. But for other people, they see that Hezbollah and by association Iran have really sucked the Lebanese state dry. So there is a huge sense of frustration for many Lebanese. But then equally, when they look south of it and they look to their neighbours in Israel, there is a greater sense of frustration there. So I think a lot of people are very conflicted, they're very mixed up, they're very scared and frightened. And they really